You are lying on your back, and you cannot move. Above you, a dark shape circles, waiting. It is not hunting you. It is waiting for you to become food. For most of human history, this was not a nightmare. It was a plan. Long before coffins, before headstones, before any word for cemetery existed, some ancient humans chose to be eaten by birds on purpose. Not out of despair, out of belief. They believed a certain bird could carry the dead somewhere else, somewhere the living could not follow. That bird was the vulture. Why a vulture? Of all the animals your ancestors could have picked to guide a soul into the afterlife, why the ugly, bald-headed scavenger circling over carcasses? Here is the strange part. The vulture does something almost no other animal does. It takes a body and makes it disappear. Flesh vanishes into the sky within hours. A single vulture can strip a carcass clean faster than almost any other predator on land. To a Stone Age mind, with no concept of bacteria or decomposition, that looked less like eating and more like transportation. The body did not rot into the earth, slowly, visibly, over weeks. It rose into the air, inside a bird, and the bird flew away. If you watch that happen enough times, you might start to wonder where the bird was actually taking it. Archaeologist Klaus Schmidt spent nearly 2 decades excavating a site in southeastern Turkey called Göbekli Tepe, a set of massive carved stone pillars built roughly 11,000 years ago, thousands of years before Stonehenge, and before humans had even invented farming. One pillar in particular became famous. Researchers now call it the Vulture Stone. It shows a huge vulture with outstretched wings hovering directly above a small, headless human figure. Schmidt and later researchers proposed something unsettling. This may be the oldest known image connecting vultures to death and the journey of the soul. Nearby, archaeologists found human skulls that had been deliberately separated from their bodies, some with cut marks, some carefully handled, and even displayed long after death. This matches a practice called excarnation, where a body is exposed to the open air and to scavenging birds, so the flesh is stripped away before the bones are dealt with separately. It sounds brutal to modern ears. But to the people who practiced it, this may not have been abandonment. It may have been release. Was this really about vultures carrying souls, or is that just a modern story projected onto old stones? That is the honest debate among archaeologists today, and it matters because we cannot ask the people who carved that pillar what they meant. What we can do is look at how far back this pattern goes and how often it repeats. The evidence gets stranger the further back you go. In Krapina, Croatia, anthropologist David Freyer studied a set of eagle talons dated to roughly 130,000 years ago, long before Göbekli Tepe, long before modern humans even existed in Europe. These talons showed cut marks and wear patterns consistent with being strung together, like a piece of jewelry or a ritual object. And the beings who made them were Neanderthals. Think about that. A different species of human, one that eventually went extinct, was already treating a bird of prey as something worth carrying, something meaningful enough to shape with their hands, thousands of generations before Göbekli Tepe was ever built. Freyer's study suggested this wasn't random. It looked deliberate, repeated, symbolic, and, look, 8 talons from at least 3 different eagles, cut in nearly identical spots, as if the maker had a specific design in mind and returned to it again and again. So this was not a single culture's odd superstition. Across tens of thousands of years and multiple human species, birds of prey and scavengers kept showing up in death rituals, again and again, independently, on different continents, with no way for one group to have copied the idea from another. Picture a small group of your ancient ancestors gathered on a hillside at dawn. Someone in the group has died. There is no shovel, no priest, no ceremony you would recognize. The body is placed on a raised platform of branches, high enough to keep it away from wolves and jackals. The group steps back and waits. Within the hour, the sky above the platform fills with wide, dark wings. Nobody screams. Nobody looks away in horror. They watch, because this is the part that matters. This is the soul leaving. Children in the group are not shielded from this. They are shown it, the same way you might be shown a funeral procession today. An elder points upward, and the child's eyes follow the bird instead of the body. That, more than any grave marker, may have been the entire point of the ritual. Give the living something to watch that is not decay. By the time that child grows old enough to lose someone of their own, the sight of wings overhead will not feel like horror. It will feel like the correct, familiar shape of an ending, the same way a modern child grows up understanding what a headstone means without ever being told directly. Some anthropologists describe this kind of guiding creature as a psychopomp, a being whose entire role is to lead the dead from the world of the living into whatever comes next. Ravens filled this role in Old Norse and Celtic traditions, believed to fly messages between the world of the living and the dead. Owls filled a similar role across parts of indigenous North America, often feared as omens that a death was coming. In Tibet, the practice of exposing a body to vultures on a mountaintop still exists today, and it is called sky burial. It is not ancient history there. It is a living funeral rite, performed openly, with the same logic your Stone Age ancestors may have relied on 11,000 years ago. Zoroastrian communities in Iran and India built structures for the same purpose, known as towers of silence, raised stone platforms designed specifically to expose the dead to the sky and to scavenging birds. The tower was not a place of horror to the people who used it. It was considered the cleanest, most respectful way to return a body to the world without contaminating the earth, the water, or the fire their religion considered sacred. Different continent, different century, different name for God, and yet the solution looks almost identical to the one carved onto that pillar at Göbekli Tepe. Why do so many unrelated cultures, separated by oceans and thousands of years, all land on a bird as the creature that carries the dead? Biologist Bernd Heinrich spent years studying raven behavior in the wild and documented just how unnervingly intelligent these birds actually are. Ravens problem solve using tools. Ravens remember individual human faces for years. Ravens appear to grieve and even hold something like funerals for their own dead, gathering silently around a fallen raven in a way that looks eerily like mourning. If your ancestors watched birds behave this way around death, generation after generation, it is not hard to imagine why they concluded these creatures understood something about dying that humans did not. Here is the counterintuitive twist. What looks to us like a gruesome ritual, a corpse left out for scavengers, may have actually been one of the most compassionate responses early humans ever developed. Burial in hard, rocky, or frozen ground was often physically impossible, with only wooden and stone tools. A body left in the open on its own invited disease, predators, and grief that lingered visibly for weeks as it decomposed in front of the living. Exposure to a vulture solved all of that within a single day. The body was gone, cleanly, quickly, and in a way your ancestors could interpret as ascension rather than decay. So the practice modern people flinch at may have actually been the version of death your ancestors found least traumatic to witness. It was not the absence of grief. It was a technology for managing it, long before anyone had a word for grief at all. You still carry a version of this instinct, even if you have never noticed it. Think about how uncomfortable it feels to watch something decompose slowly in front of you, versus how much easier it feels to imagine someone simply going somewhere else. Funerals today still use language like passed on, or gone to a better place, or flew away. You are not so different from the people standing on that hillside, watching wings fill the sky. You have just replaced the vulture with a metaphor, and the mountaintop with a church. Even the shape of grief has not changed as much as you might think. You still want a body to disappear cleanly. You still want someone, or something, to carry what is left of a person somewhere you cannot follow. You have simply traded a bird for a belief. The bird is gone from most modern rituals. The instinct it satisfied never left. You still need the dead to go somewhere. Your ancestors just had a bird willing to prove it,